Welcome back, team, on the journey to transform culture. I'm Steve, and I'll be your guide. Well, team, today let's talk a little bit about being proactive. It may sound pretty simplistic. You got to be proactive. You go shopping, right? You need supplies, and you got to fill the cupboard and the fridge with things that you need. That's being proactive, right? Because you're going to need those things. And it's really no different organizationally. And we think about these things, we think about those in very, I won't say surface, but we think about those in pretty straightforward ways. But if you think about it a little bit further down, you get into the element of planning, right? Being proactive is actually the key to being productive is to be proactive. But more than just being productive, you can kind of head potential misfortunes off at the pass, right? So if you're planning, in the Air Force we used to say proper prior planning prevents poor performance. I took out a little of the color on that, but you get the point. When you do that proper prior planning, you eliminate a lot of risk factors, right? So if it's supplies that you need, the last thing you need for your organization, especially if you make a product where your organization, so many material resources are required, you just can't be short on those resources. And sometimes dealing with supply chain and all of that, if somebody drops the ball to be proactive, right, or over-reliance on a system, right? Some of these systems that are out there today, to kind of tap you on the shoulder when your supplies get to a certain level to have you do your reorders and so forth. These things can fail on us, right? And a lot of organizations also do their backup to the backup. It's like, well, I typically I need to double and recheck these things because the system's great, but it's only about 70% accurate. You get these little workarounds and stuff. And that's being proactive. You're proactively heading off risk at the pass. And a big one that gets, I'll say, I don't know if it's missed or if people are afraid of it, but customer follow-up. Being proactive to follow up with your customer after you've shipped a product to make sure that they received it, even though you may know that they've received it. Such a huge part of closing the loop with a customer to make sure that they got what they need. And oftentimes that can fall off your radar because you think, well, we shipped it, they asked for it, they got it, I know they got it, but you didn't necessarily get a confirmation, but you're pretty sure. You can check the tracking and the logs and so forth, and they have it. But some, I think, are a little skittish to do a follow-up. I think we're afraid to hear critical feedback. We're afraid to hear, we don't want issues, right? But the difficulty is that if you don't step into that willingly, that it'll find you. Even if you don't want it to find you, even if you want to ignore it. So oftentimes people will speed past that whole part of the process, but it's such a critical part of the process because it's also an opportunity to continue the conversation with your customer to find out other needs that they might have. A lot of folks in sales will see those opportunities, but customer service representatives sometimes. But if you're not proactive in these things, even to the extent that you make a follow-up schedule, each week for yourself, are you scheduling each day out? Typically, most leaders and functionals will have, your calendar of events and the hard items that you have to address for the next day, week, month, that sort of thing. But it's also important that we impress upon all of our team members, because even folks who are the newest to your organization, even if you make widget A, B, C, or D, insert widget type, it's important that they understand where they left off and, hey, what am I going to do when I get there? Well, they know what they're going to do because it's the same process we always do. Yeah, but you want them to imbibe that process, right? You want them to follow the correct procedures, but at the same time, you want them to be proactive. Well, I need to make sure I do the X, the Y, and the Z prior to running the thing. Another element where things can get lost in the sauce is the proper startup requirements and you could say like a preheat or pre-start procedures for machinery. Sometimes the workforce can get so, go, that they either forget or it falls off their, I should say off of their list of priorities, which it shouldn't, to do their pre-start checks, to do their walkarounds for significant equipment and that sort of thing. These are vital, not only for the, to be productive and make sure that what you make gets made correctly, but also for the safety of your workforce. So it's incumbent that we impress upon our workforce that we're proactively planning. During the COVID, onset in 2020, bleeding into 2021, one of the things that I had thought about was covering your risk assessment, doing what if scenarios. Simply get 100 blank cards from Hobby Lobby or something like that and write on those, the most obvious things that can go wrong: machine malfunction, power outages, you name it. Just start going through the list. It's going to be different for every organization because not every organization makes widgets. Some it's service related, some it's marketing. You got a whole litany of differing requirements. But go down and create a master list of every possible and conceivable what if scenario, in a bullet statement. And consider that during your retraining times when you're doing safety and, whether you're doing every 60, 90 day, whatever you're doing for your folks. And use that as a way to keep sharp because you want your team to be thinking, hey, how would we overcome that? And where do we shift priorities? That's one area where the AI can help as well, because you can, load in a bunch of these variables and see what the AI kicks out for a particular variable, right? And might give you a list of, hey, give me a list of 5 action items I should do in a sequence. Some of it's pretty obvious because you've made what you've made and do what you do for quite a while. But some of these things you might find nuanced results because not only that, but you're also pulling from your workforce to find out what their feedback is. And from these things, you can go, wow, we hadn't considered, it may be that there's only 20% of this entire list that you come up with that are really outliers that you really hadn't considered before. But I'm telling you what, if it was 1% and you talk about it and you work it out, hey, incorporate a few of these into your operations plan, your operational risk assessment, and then if you need to document it out, hey, these are the recommended actions that we take in case XYZ occur. It could be flood, it could be natural disasters, it could be flood, fire, tornadoes, hurricanes, earthquakes, you name it, right? It's one thing to do your emergency response, that's a requirement, but functionally, what do you do, right? What do you do when you come back? What are your checklist steps when you come back to work? What are your, what's your process and procedure once you return to the site? Instead of standing there staring at the damage or XYZ, hey, boom, 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 you do this, you do that, you have it lined out, so now you know what your action steps are, and at least get you going in the right direction. So these are some risk mitigation efforts, but to be proactive is to mitigate risk. So highly recommend these things. You can't go wrong to have some of these in your back pocket. The other thing is you might encounter things as you go. You bring on new product or service. That's part of that process, is to go, hey, what are the risks? What are some risks to this product or this process? Or, if this happens, what do we do then? What product do we default to? What product do we default to when this machine goes down? What do we do when this happens? You go down the line and you come up with that list, and that'll help you out, and that'll help you at least curb some of the pain later on. It's a good way to take up some of that downtime if you've got a slow season. Not everybody has a slow season, but if you have a slow season, hey, and for leaders, because we know, there is the workday never ends, right? You could be sitting there watching TV and something comes to mind. Oh, wow, I need to write that down. And you make a list. You might make a kind of an informal list yourself and go, hey, this is how I would deal with this. And then incorporate that into your O plan, or or another reference off of your O plan. Anyway, so remember to be proactive in your daily, weekly, monthly, obviously your annual planning, not only for the resources that you need, but be proactive about taking care of your team. Be proactive about making sure that everybody's looked after, whether it be training and development, whether that be some of the regulatory requirements. It might be that you designate certain individuals to do some regulatory research during different product phase development aspects of your development. Be proactive. Can't speak highly enough for it. And also, another element of being proactive is, and pick this up flying in the Air Force, calling a timeout. If something seems dumb, dangerous, or different, your team members should be able to go, I have a question here. This doesn't seem quite right. That's another proactive step. I really highly recommend you steal that. Since today is the Air Force's 77th birthday, happy birthday, Air Force. I offer that up to the world at large. If you didn't know that before, calling a timeout if something seems dumb, dangerous, or different. And that isn't to say someone seems that way, but something, right? An occurrence, something that's going on, because that might be a safety. You might have a safety save if you get your folks to be able to speak up if something is, doesn't seem right. You need folks to be able to do that. So that's another proactive step. Hey, if something doesn't seem right, call a timeout, ask a question, pick up the radio, pick up the phone, pick up whatever, and ask the question. Always ask the question instead of wandering lost through the woods. Remember, if you're 1 degree off right now, you're going to be 1,000 or 2,000 miles off from target downrange. So always remember that. Something you might consider to be, they'll figure it out. Well, there's your 1 degree. If you assume that people will just figure it out, right? Don't leave anything to chance. So don't want to spend too much time. Hope everyone's having a wonderful week. Take care. Remember to hit the good domino 3 to 5 times a day to help, support, guide, mentor, lead, uplift, and just inspire folks. And when you do that, not only you're transforming their lives and that of culture, but you're also transforming yourself. And that's an amazing thing. All right, folks, have a great day. Hit like, share, and subscribe, and we'll talk to you next time.